Hi, I'm Michael Makovsky, President CEO of JINSA. Welcome. I'm here with my distinguished colleague, John Hanna, the Charles and Randi Wax Senior Fellow here at JINSA. John, let's talk about Syria, because that's been the news the last couple of days. You have these clashes in southern Syria, it seems like, with the Syrian Druze and Bedouins, and the Druze in the central and the Syrian military, with the central government of Damascus trying to bring different ethnic groups more under its sovereignty. You have then the Israelis get involved in trying to protect the Syrian Druze. Israel has about 150,000 Druze living in Israel, and they serve in the military, and they're very well respected for their military prowess. And with Bibi Netanyahu saying we're want to protect our brothers' brothers, and but they don't just do that, and they say they want to keep the southern part of Syria near their border demilitarized, so they bomb the palace and the defense ministry in Damascus. But then it seems like there's a bit of a reversal on inviting some of the troops back. You want to make some heads or tails of what's going on and why Israel is getting involved in this, when it seems like it has other fronts that is still busy on, including in Gaza, and monitoring what's going on in Iran?
Yeah, I know. Listen, Mike, there is a huge amount of fog of war. Trying to make heads or tails of it is a really difficult task. This obviously began as this local clash between Bedouins and at least certain Druze militias. It's all roiled up into claims on land, on criminal enterprises, on the Captagon, the drug trade, smuggling across the Jordanian border. And as a result of these clashes, it's clear that al-Sharaa in Damascus, who has, his writ doesn't extend to huge parts of the country, either the Druze in the south, some parts of the Alawites on the coast, the Kurds in the northeast. He saw an opportunity to come in to try and restore calm and extend his forces down over the Druze in the south. And despite the fact that there are clear, long-standing Israeli red lines, we're not going to let you send heavily militarized units into the south that could threaten the Druze. For whatever reason, he decided to send forces, and he got whacked by the Israelis. Not only those columns of a half a dozen tanks that were rolling towards Soweto, but then he escalated to actually, for the first time, certainly since the civil war in Syria began in 2011, the Israelis bombed Damascus. The defense ministry, they put a bomb right next to al-Sharaa's palace in Damascus as a way to send a signal. U.S. got involved. U.S. convinced al-Sharaa to withdraw his troops, but lo and behold, the local skirmishes just escalated from there. You now have Bedouin tribesmen by the tens of thousands all over Syria mobilizing and moving down toward the Druze south. And the Israelis, as a result, have said, we're not going to send in troops into Soweto. Why don't these Syrian defense units come back at least for 48 hours and try and restore calm? So it's all a bit of a mess. The U.S., as we all should remember, went all in for Sharaa back last May when the president met him in Riyadh, agreed to meet him in Riyadh, has now lifted a huge chunk of the sanctions on Syria. We've got a very active envoy, our ambassador in Turkey, Tom Barak, who's our envoy in Syria, who seems to be very supportive of al-Sharaa, has talked about there needs to be a strong central government in Syria. There shouldn't be any kind of decentralization and federalism like some of the ethnic and sectarian minorities are calling for. Whether or not Sharaa took a message from that and misunderstood that he now had a free hand from the United States to try and go take over all the parts of Syria that his forces don't control. Who knows? It seems to me it's possible that there were a lot of misunderstandings here and a lot of miscalculations that now leave us on the precipice of a real mess and a potential descent back into some form of sectarian ethnic civil war, and maybe even the collapse of al-Shara's government in Damascus, that I think neither the U.S., our Arab partners, and I would think Israel at some level doesn't want to happen, because I think that kind of chaos is going to be an open invitation, not only for a lot of death and killing and bloodshed, but for the Iranians and ISIS and other bad actors to kind of roll back in and take advantage.
Let's pick up on that last point, because the interest of the different, a couple of these different countries, the Israeli interests, the Turkish interests, they might be different right now. You know, you pointed out, let's talk about the federalism. You had Golan Heights, the foreign minister of Israel, saying not that long ago, basically wanted to decentralize Syria. Actually, it was something I also wrote about over 10 years ago, thinking this isn't a real country, not a nation state in the Western sense. No, most countries in the Mideast aren't. I mean, it seems like they've never really fully moved on from the Ottoman period, when the Ottomans ruled this area before World War I. And these ethnic, tribal, clan, religious divisions have persisted over all this time, despite the efforts to try to create these sort of nation states. So you had the Israelis talking like that a bit. Then, as you point out, Trump, goes all in on al-Sharaa, removes a lot of the Syrian sanctions. The Turkish interest seems to be they want a stronger Damascus, right? They want to have they certainly don't want the Kurds to have to be a strong entity in Syria. Yet, as you point out, if you have that, on the other hand, if you have this sort of decentralized system, does it invite ISIS to have a greater say? The Iranians, you could see how maybe the Iranians could take advantage, as you point out, of more chaos. On the other hand, are they really in a position right now to really take advantage of this sort of chaos with Hezbollah weak, and they're still trying to recover from the military operation last month? On the other hand, maybe the Israelis have kind of, which historically always seemed to like a strong address, a strong central government among their neighbors, they got used to for a while, and it's the advantages of having a weak capital in Syria, as it has in Iraq, as it's so I don't know. There seem to be a lot of cross currents of interest. Is it better for Israel to have a weaker Damascus? Is it not better? Clearly, the United States has indicated they want a stronger central government. Clearly, the Turks want that. You see conflicting views out of Israel. Then just last week, Netanyahu's in Washington, and there's a buzz about maybe there's an agreement. There could be an agreement between Israel and Syria, that there have been secret talks. Bibi doesn't want to address a question, explicitly asked him about talks between Israel and Syria. Is it aggression, non-aggression back? Is it maybe something more like akin to an Abraham Accords agreement? And then you have this. It's kind of hard to make out really what is in the clear U.S. interest, the Israeli interest, and do these sort of clashes, are they going to lead to some agreement between Israel and Syria, or are they going to push the two parties further apart?
Yeah, I don't see this facilitating any better relationship between Syria and Israel at this point. I think the confusion is on the Israeli side, frankly. I think the Arabs know what they want. They want a strong central government in Damascus that's cohesive. That doesn't mean that they don't want, a serious level of power sharing and involvement in the new government by these various ethnic minorities and sectarian minorities to have their rights preserved. And I think the United States and the Turks want that as well. Israel seems to be a bit schizophrenic on what it wants. As you said, I think from the time of the Sharaa government, when it fell, they had a strong instinct. This guy was a jihadi in a suit that needed to be kept very weak, destabilized, and maybe even taken out. But before that, but after that, I'm sorry, you had Trump go all in, and like you said, you had reports that Israeli and Syrian security officials are meeting almost on a daily basis. You had Trump and Bibi talking up the prospects for a dramatic positive change in Israeli-Syrian relations. You had Gideon Sa'ar, who you mentioned, the Israeli foreign minister, in Brussels last week at an EU meeting where the foreign minister for Syria is also participating. And then you had al-Sharaa go to Baku in Azerbaijan, where the Azeri president facilitated a meeting between al-Sharaa and senior level Israeli officials to talk about the future of the relationship. So this sudden reversal to where within a matter of days we're in direct talks about a better relationship and reconciliation to bombing the presidential palace in Damascus is absolutely head-snapping. You would think with all of this now international diplomatic contact with the al-Sharaa government, with the Israelis in direct contact, that somehow as this crisis down in the south between the Bedouins and the Druze began to escalate, you would have been able to send signals and have some discussions about the way forward that wouldn't cross anybody's red lines and that everybody understood what they were doing. But that clearly didn't happen, and for whatever reason we are where we are, which I think is a pretty dangerous and precarious situation, including for Israel, and the real risk that it gets dragged and sucked in to a bloody and deadly internal Syrian dispute at a time where at least one part of the country is pretty clearly exhausted and needs a rest from this 21-month multi-front war.
Yeah. I just wonder, just in an internal Syria issue, we should wrap here on this. It's just a question. If you're part of a minority group in Syria and you see what just happened with the Druze and the Syrian military, and after what we saw, what it seems like we understood happened between supporters of Sharaa and Alawites before, which got very bloody and a lot of Alawites being killed. You wonder, is it going to give you more confidence that the Sharaa government really wants to be inclusive and wants to represent all ethnic groups, or does it make you think we got to be very careful and we got to maintain as much of our own local strength and autonomy as possible? Because, but I don't know, that's something we're going to have to watch. So look, John, thank you very much for illuminating this. It's a very complicated situation with a lot of cross currents, and I know we're going to talk about it again in the future. I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I want to wish you, John, and everybody joining us a good weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.